Welcome to my resin project of renovating a Formica countertop. I call it Waves Goodbye to Drab. Waves because I did waves on the countertop. So first you want to make sure you take out your sink. Right now I'm just scraping down the caulking on this. And we tag teamed it to get it out faster. So my husband took out the plumbing. For sanding it down, I just had a little hand sander, which I used a 220 grit on for this part. Then the primer, I got a primer that was good for all surfaces. I still had to do about 3, I think I stopped at 3 coats on this. Wanted the resin to stick to it and also wanted to make sure that it was covered up nicely for any colors. So for the resin, I started with Ecopoxy is the brand, and I was using FlowCast. I didn't really know a whole lot about their products. I wanted to use something that was eco-friendly and bio-based, so I was really drawn to Ecopoxy. These are just resins, the colors. So it was turquoise luster, dark turquoise, and candy blue are the colors there. So FlowCast ended up being a mistake for Ecopoxy because it was really runny and it took 72 hours between each time to dry. I think about 48-hour mark is when you could do your other layer. But it just kept running off the countertop and taking so long to dry, so I'd end up having to pull stuff out of the resin a lot. And the waves are getting way too close to the edge of the countertop, you can see here. So that was my first mistake, using FlowCast and not UVPoxy, which is more recommended for countertops, tabletops, more of like the thin pour kind of stuff. FlowCast is great for like a river table. So if you're wondering which one to do, if you're doing a countertop, I would definitely recommend UVPoxy. When I finally figured it out and made the switch, it made a huge difference. So in this photo, or in this video, you can see I already did the metal tape around the sink, and metal tape for ductwork is actually really good at helping with the resin, keeping it in place. So it's a good stopper so that the resin wouldn't just dump into the sink. But you can see here, my waves are trying to just go off the edge already, and so they're already way too close to the edge of the countertop. I've given myself a lot less room to work with. It kind of messed me up. So here's where I applied the metal tape. So much of resin projects is actually mixing, really, in the grand scheme of it. And with UVPoxy, if you use Ecopoxy's UVPoxy, you want to mix it as slow as possible to keep the bubbles from coming out. But the blowtorch is fun to knock the bubbles out. But yeah, because of FlowCast having such a long cure time and pot life, I would spend forever trying to pull out little hairs and dust that happen to find their way in there. And I decided to just paint the backsplashes there with acrylic since I didn't remove them before doing this. Looking back in hindsight, I wish I had taken the whole countertop off and done this very differently, but since sometimes you don't have that option, I decided to just give this a chance here and see how it worked. I couldn't get it to look like waves coming up on the beach to the point that I liked it. It just kept running. So I kept adding tape. This is resin tape. I kept adding it to form my wave look, and it worked really well for some things, but you can see it kind of squared off, and I'll explain that later.
where it's at. What I can't decide is if I should do more to the sand, because you can't really tell it's the rose gold. I have to round off these waves since they were blocked by tape. This is actually really nice, I like that. And then I have to add a little more white to the waves. I do have to sand it again too. I got the mermaid scales in there, see all that purple? Ooh. But yeah, so this is where it is now, and I have to sand down these like chunks in the front. I also have a lot of drips. Oh man, look at that. And then whenever I'll be ready to pour the flood coat, which is clear, just to make sure this all levels out. But right now I did this most recently and it's on top of the waves, so that doesn't really work.
So as you can tell, I just wasn't happy with the rose gold not coming out, and something just felt like it was missing. It didn't have the wow that I was really looking for. So I decided to go back, and there I said I mixed like a craft sand, it was white, with rose gold just resin. It's satin rose gold, and it turned out really nice. It applied pretty well too, and it had more of a sand look. And I also put in mother of pearl from Just Resin and mermaid flakes from Just Resin. So as you get up close, you'll see some sparkles in there, and the mermaid flakes are one of my favorite because they're really pretty and they're purple and they show in certain lighting. But I'm redoing all my waves here. And the UVPoxy is what I've started using at this point, and it's such a better difference. Even though my waves you can kind of see are coming off a little bit on the front there, it's okay. It actually ended up working okay. But that shorter time was so much better, and by this point I finally started really liking it. It was just a little different. I waited, I believe I gave it 6 hours in between the first waves there that I did and the second waves, and it was pretty well cured. It was still just barely tacky, so that made a huge difference there. So my second round of waves was better, and that's finally something I like now. And I added Just Resin blue glow pigment powder, just for the bioluminescent algae look. And here the tape didn't really hold up the way that I wanted it to, so I still had to go through and scrape off all my drips again. And for sanding, again, I have another little hand sander, power sander. This one's the 5-inch rope orbital sander. And I was doing 220 grit on that. And then I also took my Dremel tool and was taking some of the really hard ones to get off with that. And then the cleanup to make sure, because there was a lot of dust left and you can kind of see it on the countertop there. So had to make sure we cleaned it really well. We took the vent cover off to make sure it wasn't blowing in there. And this is where I painted the backsplashes again, just to make sure they looked nice. And I'm ready for my final pour here. This was the clear coat, so beginning the final pour. It took 3 total clear coat flood pours, and I'm using a trowel to spread it around, and that made a huge difference too. With the clear coat, the trowel did wonders for me. And it was the V-notch trowel too, that does make a difference. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out or let me know in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe if you like what you see. I hope this has helped somebody.
So here is a closer version of it. You can see, did kind of some cool stuff there that I like, I appreciate. Here's the waves up close, some depth there. I have some marks that I'm still cleaning off of here because of the last sanding that I had to do on it. The sink's not caulked yet. But yeah, here's the countertop now. There's this mermaid flakes, see, as I go across it. They're actually mermaid scales. I keep calling them flakes, but they're scales. And you can kind of see the sand in there, which is pretty cool. If I turn the light on, you can kind of see all that a little bit better.